Are we mostly ready and set for going, or? I haven't. Just checking with staff to.
Sure.
Thank you. Oh, I see her now.
Okay.
We're all good? Set? All right. I'd like to start by acknowledging that we're holding this committee of the whole on traditional lands of the Ka'aman Nation, Treaty Nation, and very privileged to be here to be your chair today. We could start with adoption of the agenda, please. Moved by Councillor Doubt, seconded by the mayor. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, we are passed. We have an agenda. So I wanted to also mention that Councillor Armida is absent with leave today, and we'll move into our adoption of minutes agenda item. If we could have somebody move those. Moved by Mayor Osnow, seconded by Councillor Doubt. Any comments on that motion? All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, that's unanimous. Which brings us to delegations. 3.1, I'd like to welcome Cathy Korolek to the podium to start us off. Welcome, Cathy.
Thank you very much. In case you don't know me, my name is Cathy Korolek, and I am a member of the Rotary Club of Powell River and have been on the qathet Festival of the Performing Arts for several years since moving here. And joining me today is Committee Chair Al Monroe, plus several other the group. And we are most appreciative of the Council's continuing support of the oldest cultural event in our region through qathet Arts Council and its grant and aid program. We also thank you for this opportunity to speak with you this afternoon. I'd like to begin with information about the sign that hangs on the exterior wall of the Evergreen Theatre, noting that Powell River was named as Cultural Capital of Canada in 2004. You may not be aware of how that happened. I wasn't. Good thing for Joyce. So past festival organizing committee chair, Joyce Carlson, also publisher and founder of the Peak newspaper, was at a national community newspaper convention in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island. It was just before Rotary became the supporter of the festival during Carlson's year as club president. The keynote speaker of the event was then Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Canadian Heritage, Sheila Cox. The minister spoke about a new program named Cultural Capitals of Canada, and while listening, Joyce Carlson said to herself, that describes Powell River perfectly. When she returned, she met with Mayor Stuart Alsgaard, who set up a committee to do the hard work of submitting an application. I just want to apologize for any mispronunciation of names right now. So she worked together with the then mayor and submitted an application. It was successful, and Powell River was awarded $250,000 along with the designation. During 2004, the festival celebrated its 60th anniversary and was allocated $20,000 to commemorate it. With the funds, the festival committee invited back several alumni to perform, including pianist Daniel Chow and speech arts participant who became a drama teacher. Tom Marcaccini. All their expenses were covered as they were living as far away as Toronto. Other cultural organizations shared in the fundraising funding, including Powell River Academy of Music, which was celebrating a 40th anniversary, and a cultural master plan was put together for the city. In 2019, to celebrate its 75th anniversary, a special concert was held to mark the occasion. Past performers were invited to return to the stage, including a group of cellists, including Prisma founder Arthur Arnold, then MLA Nicholas Simon and Eli Schweitzer, a regular festival participant who was recommended several times to the Performing Arts BC Provincial Festival, including the one Powell River hosted in 2015. The concert MC was former Mayor Stuart Alsgaard, who played piano in the first festival and with the school band later. Even COVID did not prevent the festival from continuing in 2021, as performers submitted their numbers digitally and adjudicators did their jobs in that medium rather than in person. In 2024, to mark its 80th anniversary, the festival was honored to partner with Prisma to host another special concert. The Curie piano trio from Poland impressed the audience with their musical abilities, and they were great. I enjoyed them thoroughly. The organizing committee is working on its 2025 festival that takes place February 26th to March 8th, when it concludes with the grand concert. Registration is underway, and we're anticipating another successful event for our community. Last year, we had over 150 participants. I now want to ask your attention to view a short video that has been prepared for you.
Dwight Hall was the venue for the first Powell River Music Festival in 1945, and this February, the 81st event will take place. The festival is the oldest continuing cultural event in the area. Thousands of feet have crossed the festival stages over the past decades, from kindergarten performers to seniors, all of them sharing their love of performing arts with appreciative audiences. In addition, so many teachers have shared their passion with those performers, and parents have encouraged and supported their youngsters. After its beginnings, the festival received a name change from Music Festival to Festival of the Performing Arts, and another name change occurred from Powell River to Qathet, in the spirit of reconciliation. It now takes place in 3 venues: James Hall at Powell River Academy of Music, Max Cameron Theatre at Brooks Secondary School, and Evergreen Theatre at the Powell River Recreation Complex. Former Mayor Stuart Alsgaard, as a young boy, participated in piano at the first ever festival in 1945, and as a teenager in subsequent years with his high school band. Canadian astronaut Robert Thirsk once played piano in the festival, as did renowned pianist Don Thompson. While there was one adjudicator for all disciplines in 1945, there is now an adjudicator for each. A group of community volunteers organized the festival until the Knights of Pythias and the Pythian Sisters took over that task. When the Pythian organizations were not able to continue, a group of festival supporters carried on until 2003, when the women issued a call for assistance from the community. That call was answered by the Rotary Club of Powell River. Members took on the task of leading the organizing committee and have been assisted ever since by community volunteers who understood the workings of the festival. Organizing committee members include Rotarians and community volunteers for the event that features performers in piano, strings, vocal and choral, speech arts, dance, as well as band and instrumental. Not knowing much about music, Rotarians applied the 4-way test, which guides the international organization of 133,000 clubs and more than 1.3 million members around the world. Service above self is its motto, and members undertake a multitude of community and international projects. All regular sessions of the festival are open to the public and free of charge, with donations gratefully accepted to assist with expenses. Each festival concludes with a grand concert that shows samples of all of the disciplines. Some performers are recommended to attend the annual Performing Arts BC Provincial Festival, which this community hosted in 1997 and 2015. Many performers in the festival have gone on to make a living performing or teaching, continuing to follow their passion for performing arts. The committee is grateful to the Qathet Arts Council, the City of Paul River, Qathet School District 47, and Qathet Regional District for their continuing financial and in-kind support for this impactful festival.
Well, thank you to Peter Harvey and Sea Panda Productions for his work on the video. In just over a month, our 81st festival begins, and we are most fortunate to present a collaboration concert with Qathet Symphony Orchestra, Qathet Concert Band, which participates in the festival, and in St. George's School Senior Concert Band. It will take place on February 28th at Evergreen Theatre. On behalf of the committee, I would like to invite Mayor Ron Wasnow or his representative to attend and give a formal welcome to the visiting band that is under direction of Jean Markel and Rob Murray. We have an invitation for all the council and would love to have you attend the special concert and the grand council concert. So thank you. I know you've got your invitations now. And do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Ms. Korolek. We'll just first go to council and see if anyone wishes to speak or have questions. Mayor Wasnow.
Point of
Mayor,
privilege, I'm not
Mayor.
able to hear the mayor.
Sorry, I was
Yeah.
Googling best places to live in Canada, and up comes Paul River. And clearly, all the work that Rotary and the groups before you have done to promote cultural activities is wonderful. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I haven't been here a long time, but I know there's a lot of cultural things that go on, and I'm very happy and proud to be able to be part of them.
Thank you. Councillor Southcott.
I just have to say thank you as well. I was on that stage many times when I was a kid, and for better or for worse. And so were my nephews. My son actually was once or twice. And, you know, it's one of these pieces of glue that holds this amazingly rich cultural community together. And it's just amazing. It's gone on for so long. When I was first involved, it was decades old. I remember that as a kid, knowing that this had already gone on for a long time. So I had the impression back then of the weight or the the heritage, and that is an amazing gift for young people as well. So thank you so much for what you're doing, and for all of you to carrying on this huge gift for this community. Really, really thrilling, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is a pleasure to be able to do these things. And it's kind of nice to be here on a happy thing. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Just a minute.
Sorry.
So I see you've given us these are the invitations to a festival on the February 28th. Is that the one? Okay. So thank you so much. The wonderful legacy of this festival is dear to many of our hearts. And wondering and curious if people out there are still thinking about the UNESCO City of Music concept and whether you know anything about that.
No.
Okay. I see Arnold's got his thumb up, and I do believe some folks in Prisma and the Academy of Music had approached the city a few years back to think about that concept, but we kind of got, you know, side blasted by COVID and so forth. But I'm still pretty excited about the idea.
Mel, she is organizing for Prisma. So yeah,
Yeah, I know. I think she might even know the idea I was talking about. Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Korolek.
Okay, thank you.
That brings us to Ecotrust Canada regarding the Home Energy Savings Program, and I believe we have someone on the computer screen.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Hey,
Please
yeah.
introduce yourself.
So my name is Michael Anthony. I'm joining you from Denman Island, which is in the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation. I work for Ecotrust Canada, which is a registered charity that focuses on economic and sustainability issues that impact rural and remote communities. I already sent a 2-pager ahead of the meeting, so I'll try not to repeat everything in there and save a lot of time for questions. So I work on Ecotrust Energy team, and my title is Regional Retrofit Project Manager. I manage the Home Energy Savings Program. So the Home Energy Savings Program seeks to address home energy issues that many rural residents face, such as energy insecurity, poor indoor air quality, poor comfort, and contractor availability. Our program has been offered in the North Island and the Prince Rupert area for the last year, and this year we're expanding to Powell River, Quadron Cortez Island, Denman, Hornby Island. So what I'm requesting is assistance from the City of Powell River to broadcast to its residents that our free service is now available in their region, and to help us reach those who would most benefit from our offering. So household energy use is closely tied with affordability of housing, with older and poorer quality housing always having higher energy costs and typically relying on inefficient and high polluting sources of heat. So our program helps bridge the knowledge gap and the access gap that rural households face. And we provide a personalized service in which each household receives a one-on-one support so that they can make the best decision for their household. Under the current provincial rebate system, income qualified households can receive up to $44,900 toward making energy renovations. This includes upgrading insulation, new windows, switching to heat pumps, ventilation, mold abatement, and air sealing. We do not push a one-size-fits-all solution. We ensure that no household falls between the cracks when it comes to their rebate application and with contractors. We also want to support the local economy as much as possible. So we work with local contractors to help them understand how to get registered with the provincial system so that they can provide rebate covered work in their area. And we also promote these local businesses once they're registered to the participants in our program. Based on a 2022 feasibility study that Ecotrust Canada conducted with the City of Powell River, it is estimated that 24% of Powell River residents and 36% of Qathet Regional District households are experiencing energy poverty, meaning they have chronic, unaffordable energy bills. With the majority of housing in Powell River being more than 20 years old, we estimate there's over 3,800 households in the area that would greatly benefit from a home energy renovation. The Home Energy Savings Program is designed based on the feedback we received from this feasibility study that we conducted in 2022. We surveyed residents of Powell River, and two of the major barriers we identified were the high upfront costs involved in engaging in a home energy renovation and difficulty navigating the contractor and rebate process. So Ecotrust Energy team has spent a lot of time working with the province to ensure that the rebate system meets the needs of low-income households. So now the way the program through the provinces deliver the rebates is they pay the contractors directly upfront. So there's no longer that steep upfront unaffordable cost to performing a renovation. And our service, being a one-on-one service, is specifically tailored to help with the rebate process and selecting contractors. So for services to reach the Powell River residents that need it the most, we are requesting that council help and approve that you promote our program on your website and social media and place articles in the Peak. We partner for a local launch event, ideally in March 2025. Announce the availability of our free program in city publications and mailers, and introduce us to other organizations already working with low-income and vulnerable households. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lefty. I'll just ask council now if we have any questions of the gentleman. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair to Michael Anthony. I know that CEA offers a retrofit program as well, and I'm wondering if you could, Community Editors Association, I'm wondering how it's similar or different. I know you already have that history of this doing the first phase study with us, and so I'm wondering, yeah, what those differences might be if you're familiar.
Yeah, I can't speak necessarily to their program. I know a lot of other programs that are not-for-profits. They have contracts with regional districts, they have contracts with cities, they have contracts with municipalities, and funding agreements. So we are not requesting funding. There is no requirement for Powell River to participate. This is like the city itself to participate. We are offering this service no matter what. So yes, there are other organizations that offer retrofit programs, and they likely are incredibly similar since we are all following, hopefully, the best research available. But we live in the region. We have 3 staff members from Ecotrust that live in the city of Powell River, and we have been working, the energy team specifically has been working in the coastal and Vancouver Island region for the last 5 years. So we also have that long history of working in the area and some existing relationships with a lot of the contractors already.
Thank you. And quick follow-up, you mentioned already working in North Island and Prince Rupert. How many, like I imagine the program grows over time as people become aware, how many households were you able to support in those areas in the first year? Like what does ramping up look like over time?
So a lot of the success depends on the amount of support we get in the region. So for example, we have more people registered in 1 week in Sointula on Malcolm Island because it was promoted by the local resource center and the community rallied, and there was great attendance at the workshops. So just in 1 week, we were able to help over 15 people in that area. We're probably over close to now 25 to 30. That might represent 50% of our participants in the North Island. And so it's difficult to answer the question because we've helped people start their application process. And because the rebates changed in June, there was a huge influx of rebate applicants to the province. So then we just had to wait for a lot of our people to get approved. So we have probably over 70 people enrolled just in that area. Prince Rupert's an example of there's lots of interest, but then a real lack of contractors. So while we're able to do a lot of the outreach and education, right, in terms of preparing households for reducing their energy bills, we're not currently able to follow through with some of the renovation types because there's no insulation or registered window contractors in that area. So we're still working with the contractors. So our program is still active in the area, trying to get contractors registered with the province so that they can service their area.
Thank you. I have another question, but I'll pass it around to other council members first.
Thank you. So if I'm a person with a home that has high energy costs and I wanted some help, what would a typical process look like? What would I do?
So typically they would just navigate to our website, register for our program. I have to collect a basic amount of information in terms of their address, their name. They also fill out a survey, which I can do over the phone with them if they have difficulty using computers. If not, it really streamlines the process when they can do it online. It's about 10 questions about their home so that I have a better sense of what their needs will be. Then the next step is they receive a one-on-one phone call with me. It's a dedicated phone call for 30 minutes in which I get them oriented and we discuss their options. And then I help them follow through on the options by either over the phone or by email, sending them the link they need to follow. And that's just the first step. After that, I usually check in with them every 3 to 5 weeks, depending on what they request. And every check-in or when they prompt me, we always solve whatever problem they're having, whether that's they're not able to source a contractor, whether it's the contractor didn't meet their expectations, whether it's their application has been delayed or lost at the provincial level, or like securing financing. So like literally it's like a one-on-one coaching support the whole way through. And the only difference is for some households who aren't as digital literate as others, they receive more phone calls and we do more over the phone instead of by email.
Oh, great. Thank you. Any other, Councillor Palm, then Councillor Dowd.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Appreciate it. And I appreciate the report and the information here today because cost savings for this type of sustainability in our region are very important. Cutting costs down for individuals is paramount in order for this to happen, especially in light of our economic present situation in our community. I guess my number one question is, once you come into a community, do you establish relationships with local contractors to make sure that local support is going to be used for all of the various pieces of equipment that you'll be installing or helping to install? How does that work?
So one, yes, absolutely, we do the best we can. The criteria for participating in the rebate process is not ours. It is dictated by the province, and it's also dictated by the Home Performance Stakeholder Council through their Home Performance Contractor Network, which is a industry-run not-for-profit that sets the standard for modern housing performance. So we always reach out and talk with as many local contractors as we can to explain to them the process. You do need a business license, you do need insurance, you do need references to register with the Home Performance Contractor Network. And of course, that's to ensure a high quality standard and to protect homeowners, and so that the province knows that these millions of dollars they're paying out to contractors is being spent properly. So we always want to keep it local. It often comes down to the will of the contractor themselves to be willing to do that little bit of extra paperwork to prove they are up to modern standards. And once they've done that, then they do not take a pay cut for any of the jobs they install. The province pays based on averages across the entire province. So in a region like Powell River would be, they would be getting fully compensated. They're not taking a pay cut to be installing windows in a low-income household or to be switching the heating source to a heat pump. That's for sure. And
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Councillor Dowd.
Yeah, thanks. Interesting presentation. I'm trying to determine exactly how all of this fits together and what your structure is in your business plan. And it seems to me that you're asking us to market your services, and your services seem to me to be identifying renovations and changes and upgrades to heating and cooling and insulation system, and you call yourselves an enterprising charity. And I'm curious about how you're actually paying all of the people that do this work and where the money comes from to operate what you're talking about.
yeah, absolutely. Can you clarify when you say paying all the people? What do you mean by that?
I think you're saying that you will come to people's homes, identify ways to upgrade their installation, their heating and cooling system, etc., and provide them information and line them up with contractors who you will encourage to get licensed. Who does that? Who pays them? And where does the money come from?
Right. So Yeah, so definitely we don't have a business model. We're a registered charity, so we don't have a business. This is a service we offer, just like any other not-for-profit or charity would offer. The money that comes to pay the contractors is through the provincial rebate system that's issued by Clean BC through the Ministry of Energy. They work with a subcontractor called Clear Result that processes all the rebate applications. And then once a contractor is registered with the province, so as I mentioned, there's the province who's Clean BC, that's the rebate body. And then there's the Home Performance Contractor Network, which is the industry body. Once a contractor registers with the HPCN, Home Performance Contractor Network, then the province will pay them directly. They'll just direct deposit into their accounts after a job is done. So we have nothing to do with the rebate process as an organization. We have nothing to do with the accreditations of the contractors. Our primary function is to help the households understand their energy use, understand how to get rebates, assist them in getting the rebates, assist them in sourcing the right contractors. Often that can mean bringing contractors in from out of the area if there are no contractors willing to register for the rebate program. If a contractor comes in from outside the area, it typically means the household is getting the work done for free. So in the context of a heat pump, for example, essentially ducted heat pump, the rebate can be up to $16,000, which covers the entire cost. In the case of installation, the rebate's up to $5,500. It covers 95% of the cost. So a household would only receive sometimes like a $200 bill to have their entire home's attic and basement insulation upgraded. So we are not, you can think of us more as a middle person, an education resource, a coaching resource, and not quite project managers because there's liability insurance required to use that title, but we essentially aid the household in managing their project.
Through the chair to council, if I might add another word to Michael, through my experience with the city of Nanaimo, we actually funded something in that city. And what I would say, this is a type of what's called concierge service to lower the barrier for people who would find it overwhelming to try and navigate how to improve their home energy bills. So, Michael, would that be an accurate way of framing it?
That's perfectly put. Thank you so much for that.
So the nonprofit you work for is funded to provide this service, or how does that work?
Yeah, so Ecotrust as a whole has donations from many areas. We receive donations. So keep in mind, I'm on the energy team. We have 5 teams on Ecotrust as a whole. We're over 30 employees. So we get donations from the public, just people. We get donations from obviously large donors. We also apply for grants and funding agreements. So it is for some of our projects, we have funding agreements to deliver a very specific program. In this case, we are funded in part by Natural Resources Canada, back when they had the Greener Homes rebate program, which is now gone. They were obviously very interested in having organizations be able to promote the rebates. So we are, this particular program is currently funded primarily through that grant from Natural Resources Canada.
Great, thank you.
So and to clarify, we don't take finder's fees or charge a commission, none of that. Everything we're providing to the contractor or to the household is completely free of charge to them.
Does that answer your question?
It's an answer.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Southcott.
Thank you. Really grateful for you being here, Michael. In the last council term, 2018 to 2022, we had a committee called the Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Committee. And one of the members of that committee was Dylan Hirama, who I believe is on your staff. Still, is he? So he did fill some of us in on the nature of your organization and your activities at the time. And it sounds like there's been a fair evolution, but as I understand it, Ecotrust Canada is fairly, like it's been around for over 10 years, right? And like quite a long time. And so as programs have changed, I'm sure like federal and provincial programs have changed, that also has changed the nature of your work. I believe I visited a First Nations community in Broughton Archipelago this summer that benefited from your work about 10 years ago. It's a massive solar system that replaced their diesel generator. And what my understanding was back then was that that's what Ecotrust did, was work with remote communities. So I appreciate that Ecotrust is now offering this. This looks like an amazing offer. And the reason why to our community, and it is definitely an evolution as I see it, from just working with remote communities, which I understand is what you used to do. Because I just recently have investigated the federal loan program for supporting solar, and I'm seriously considering putting rooftop solar on our home. It's also a mid-60s home, so it does need to be re-insulated as well, and it would suit some renovation for secondary suite, and that targets a whole other issue that isn't within the repertoire of Ecotrust Canada right now. But also there's rebates through the province, and I really appreciate the concierge function that you do perform. So just to put it in a nutshell, there is a whole lot of different elements available to people right now, and you would cover the entire spectrum of what's available through provincial and federal programs. Is this true? To basically help people get the best value, and that is not going to cost the residents of the community. Am I on the right track with that?
Yes, Councillor. It sounds like you're going to be one of the first people to register for our program, which is great. So we do cover every potential rebate currently offered by the province and the federal government, including the no interest loan that I think you may have been alluding to through the Greener Homes. And then there's also, yes, the new BC Hydro solar grants. And yeah, we definitely, like I said, we always ensure that the household is informed so they can make the best decision for themselves. Rooftop solar might not be the best solution for everybody, depending on what their goal is. Their goal is to reduce their reliance on the grid or reduce their carbon footprint, then solar might be the way to go. If they're really just interested in reducing their energy bill literally overnight, then switching to a heat pump when it's sometimes completely free installation is often what we let them know is available to them. And then yes, we help them understand all the fine print that comes along with each rebate, because there's probably 3 or 4 different requirements when applying for the different rebate streams. And that is by far the hardest part when it comes to people achieving renovation, is they'll start one and then they find out that they didn't follow the right steps. And so we're always there to ensure they don't get lost.
Go ahead.
So I didn't go through Ecotrust Canada. I was investigating this on my own. And should I stop and then consult with you guys? Just so that because I'm fairly well informed about this stuff. I've been chasing this for many years, but I don't assume that I know as much as you do. Would it be good for me to look into your program?
Absolutely. And we also did, as part of the 2022 feasibility study, my coworker Dylan, who you mentioned is an engineer, he did the energy modeling. So we modeled, I believe it was 9 different types of homes in Powell River. And using the energy modeling, we actually can predict how effective it is if you change your insulation, how effective it is if you switch to a heat pump, how effective it is if you install rooftop solar. So that's why we are equipped to give pretty accurate information based on the household's goals. So yeah, anybody, and just to clarify, anybody who did register with our program, it's no commitment. It's, you know, there's no fee, there's no nothing. So yes, if you were interested in finding out more about what's out there or clarifying your own journey through this rebate process, then yeah, absolutely, I would encourage you to register for our program, and then you'll get a one-on-one phone call with me.
Awesome. And I really appreciated the very detailed report that came along with, it was attached to our agenda. There's a huge amount of information in there, and I went through it fairly quickly, and I'm going to reread that. So really appreciate this, and I'd like to make a motion if there are after questions.
Just like, do we have any other questions? Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you. For the chair, you mentioned low income households, and so I'm wondering if there's like a span of types of incomes of households that you prioritize working with, or is that more about the level of grants that they might be eligible for? You can speak to eligibility a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So our organization so our program, I'll say, won't turn someone away based on their income. The rebate streams, as set out by the province, are the rebate incentive is based on 1, the number of people in your household, and then 2, the total household income. And then the third factor that is considered is your current heating system, and that's particularly in the case of a heat pump. So I also use the language income qualified household, income qualified simply meaning they fit the particular bracket that Clean BC has set out to be income qualified. So in this sense, in many ways, it actually is a pretty smart qualification system, for example, because if you're a single parent with 3 children, you have a 4-person household, you will have a high likelihood of qualifying for the program. Lots of pensioners and people on fixed income, often they have 3 tiers, level 1 to 3, often qualify for level 3. Level 1, which is the highest rebate category. That's the one where you get $16,000 toward a heat pump, $5,500 toward insulation, $9,500 toward windows. So our program doesn't have a requirement or stipulation, but once you've had your one-on-one phone call with me, then the participant is aware as to which income category they fall in, and then I can help them financially plan. Because for some people, they would say, well, I could do it if it's within $2,000, but if I have to pay more than $2,000, I can't go through with it, that kind of thing. So that's a lot of the service we offer, is helping people financially plan and ensure they're going to be able to follow through if they start the paperwork.
Thank you. And one more question about eligibility, and this would relate more to grants probably, but maybe you could answer the question. I'm thinking of 2 scenarios that might not be eligible. One is, I can imagine renters facing energy insecurity or poverty, and whether this is eligible for non-primary residences. So for example, if someone was a landlord on a second property, or situations where people have an entrepreneurial spirit and would like to take on some of the easier renovations themselves. So like, I know that even caulking windows can be part of a recommendation, and many people would not need to hire someone to do caulking, but I'm wondering about DIY and landlord renter situations.
Yeah, absolutely. So under the current Clean BC eligibility rubric, which again, I have to toot our horn, toot Dylan and Josephine's hard work to influence the province, tenants are covered for these rebates. The stipulation is that the tenant must have a BC Hydro account number. So if the landlord is currently paying for the BC Hydro bill, or if it's included in the rent, we tell people, hey, put the bill in your tenant's name, and then let me talk to your tenant, and we can get a heat pump and all these renovations done to your building, the tenant or building. There are stipulations around stratas and multi-residential buildings. A lot of them do qualify, but that's another thing I help people understand. But let's say it's just a single detached home. The landlord does have to sign a type of contract with the province, essentially promising not to evict the tenant after the renovation is completed. Again, to preserve affordable housing stock. And to answer the second part of the question about DIY, So again, through the province, all work must be done by a registered home performance contractor network contractor. We as Ecotrust do encourage DIY. So for example, something like air sealing, changing the weather stripping on your doors, sealing any holes that are just obvious on the outside of your home. Part of my job is traveling to these communities and hosting these workshops, which is why one of our requests was to partner with the city to have a launch event so that there's trust that when I arrive in a community and have a workshop in which I start explaining to people, look, you can't get the province to pay for your weather stripping, but it's only $25 to buy the weather stripping, and I'll show you how to do it. And so that's what we're doing as well, is we are providing in-person tailored workshops. We're going to be providing one on indoor air quality, which is through a recommended do-it-yourself air filter that BC Lung Association is promoting, which costs like less than $40. You can make it yourself, and it really improves the indoor air quality of your home. So we're going to be including that in future workshops. So definitely bigger renovations are covered under the federal Greener Homes No Interest Loan. So if you did want to do a renovation yourself, you can get pre-approved through the federal program and, for example, insulate your entire basement yourself. And that program also has a more holistic, wider definition of what a renovation would be. So in some cases, people can actually do renovations to their roof, assembly, and attic at the same time, rather than just insulation. So that's also something we guide people toward. And I get, lots of DIYers calling me just to say, hey, how would you insulate this window? Hey, how would you fix this in my basement? And I'm always super happy to help. And I send them along with best recommended practices through BC Housing. So we always make sure we're giving them the best resource as well as my own opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I believe Councillor Silcott had a motion he wanted to make.
Yeah, so I'd just like to move that we direct staff to work with Ecotrust Canada on the 4 bullet points in the support request at the bottom of the attachment to our agenda.
I'm just checking with staff if that motion makes good sense, or if you have any recommendations for how that might be implemented.
Through the chair to council, I think that wording will work fine. It's fairly clear what the asks are. I've already checked in with our team, both Director Gao and our communications manager, Callie Cuthbertson, Callie Matthews. And this is something we can do within existing budgets and involve staff as part of climate change and actions that is already on council's priorities for staff. So in terms of our ability to do that without additional budget, it's there. And in terms of the motion, I think what might be helpful if Caitlin could do is just cut and paste them, and then there we go. And it's nice and clear, and you don't have to read it out.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So if I get a seconder, we can contemplate the motion. Is there we need a seconder first. Seconded by Mayor Wasnow. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only comment, I mean, this seems like a huge opportunity for our community. We, in previous years, my 2 previous terms, our planning department has worked very hard. We were very to do exactly this kind of thing, and with accessing various previous programs, both federally and provincially. We even provided a top-up rebate for the heat pump rebate program that the province did prior to 2020, I believe. So there was a lot of commitment from the city. This is what is involved here is it's not just zero interest loans from the feds and rebates from the province, but the loans target like up to 40,000 for solar and up to 80,000, I believe, for insulation and renos, for energy targeted renos for homes. so much as in of our housing stock here, single dwelling R1 type residential is in need of this kind of work to make it more energy efficient. And so I think this is just a huge opportunity for us. And I believe our planning department is, well experienced. Staff there, many of them were around when we were doing these other initiatives in previous years as well. So I'm really excited about this and obviously support it. Thank you.
So I've got Councillor Isaacson, Councillor Palm, and Councillor Dowd.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, also supportive of this motion. I know Ecotrust, through its previous work with the city, has that existing relationship and existing expertise. And so the investment by the city is quite low, but it sounds like based on your experience in other communities, that small level investment from municipality can really add to the uptake among members of the community. And so in a way that we can benefit members of the community with a very little investment of city resources, I wholeheartedly am excited about this. And it's something that I would very possibly uptake on my own, whether or not this motion passes, because I know I find myself like I feel like I'm a pretty internet savvy person, but trying to navigate the granting programs is a bit overwhelming. So I would highly encourage anyone in the community, irrespective of how this motion passes, to uptake Ecotrust on their offer.
Thank you. Councillor Palm.
Thank you, through the chair. Having renovated just a few years ago with this, that, and the other, I was able to go through BC Hydro, get tremendous rebates for my items that I was purchasing for my home. It was a seamless process with a local contractor who was registered with that program. My question is, do you know how many contractors or service providers in our area are currently registered with the type of people you reach out for the numerous rebates that you're talking about?
So we passed the question period. We're trying to speak to this motion. Do you need the answer to the question for the motion?
I'm just trying to get a gauge of how many people are already signed up in Powell River to provide not only the service, but the mechanical component.
Can we come back to that after the motion? I don't think it's relevant to whether the motion passes or not. Councillor Dowd.
So the motion is, I think it says, basically direct staff to go ahead and create this partnership between the city and the enterprising charity. I don't know whether an enterprising charity qualifies as a business under the community charter, but I would have wanted to know that from staff if we were asking for a report back. I don't know how much partnering is going to cost. The CAO says that her belief is that she can do that within the existing budget. That's probably not very much. I would like to know how much we're deciding to spend before we decide to spend it. And I would like to know more of the details of the program. I've read all of the 2 pages of the proposal that we have in front of us on our agenda, and it leaves a lot of questions in my mind. And I'm not prepared to say yes at this point right now. So if this is the motion we're dealing with, rather than asking for a more full report from staff, I won't be supporting it.
Do we have any other comments on the motion before we call the question? All in favor of the motion? Or anybody opposed to the motion? We have Councillor Dowd opposed. The motion carries. Mr. Lutke, I believe Councillor Palm had a question about whether you knew anything about how many contractors are registered with appropriately with for your program.
Right, thanks. Yeah, so to clarify, the contractor list is the Home Performance Contractor Network's responsibility, so they're technically not registered with us. There's currently 16 contractors listed as willing to service the Powell River area. I'd say only about 11 of them actually had their office in Powell River. And I was actually in a meeting with the Home Performance Contractor Network this morning, and they are, there are, I'll say, dozens of contractors in their queue to complete the exam and registration process. So yeah, currently it looks like there's about 10 or 11 registered Powell River businesses allowed to deliver these rebates. And I will be contacting every single one of them to tell them about our program and asking if they're interested in working with us. And hopefully they are all interested.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lutfi. I'm going to let you go now, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you all. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
So that brings us to our reports, section 5 on our agenda. Bye, guys. 5.1 for Director Gao.
Through the
Sorry.
chair, I'm just going to briefly introduce before I hand this over to Director Gao. So the report you have before you is regarding a wildfire development permit area. This is something that's been on the work plan for planning for some time. It is also helping fulfill the background work to the Sustainable Official Community Plan Review, and the timing is very timely given what's going on down south. So the report before you and what Director Gao is looking for is direction to the consultant that we're working with on what buffer we would like to see the development permit area apply to, and essentially what requirements would be made of households or buildings within that buffer to maintain a level of fire protection for their buildings. So with that, Director Gao has a presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for having me. I do think the CEO touched on a number of topics that I was going to, or comments that I was going to make, but hopefully I can just move us through this seamlessly. So the purpose of the report before you is to present information regarding the Wildfire Hazard Development Permit Area project and to obtain direction from Council regarding an appropriate wildfire buffer. In the summer of 2024, Frontera Forest Solutions was retained by the city to lead the implementation of a wildfire hazard development permit area. This work includes the establishment of development permit guidelines for areas susceptible to wildfires or their impacts. These guidelines generally cover components such as subdivision layouts, fire-resistant building materials, and landscaping and vegetation guidelines. Now, at the midway point of this project, staff and Frontera Forest Solutions are looking for some guidance from Council on a key element of how the development permit area will be applied. Staff are requesting that Council give direction on the establishment of a wildfire buffer. And it's a little hard for me to tell whether you can see my screen. I've tried to share it. Oh, thank you very much. IT, I think I just saw that shift. This is the intro slide, but I'm going to move to the next slide.
So Director Gao, what we do see your presentation, but it's not in presentation mode. It's kind of tiny. I don't know if that's how you intended it to be.
No, that's not. But if you're just seeing the one page, it's let's see what I can do here. Hold on. How about that?
It looks like the agenda now.
That's not me sharing the agenda. So maybe IT can support me on that, but.
Yeah. Through the chair, Director Gao, if you're able to give the presentation to IT and Carson, he could throw it up there for you.
Oh, it looks good now. I don't know what we did different, but it's good now.
Okay. Thank you. Great. So this is the intro slide. Moving to the next slide here. A wildfire buffer is measured as the distance extending outward from areas near burnable fuels, which are those vegetated areas with potential to carry wildfire. Examples of burnable fuels include forests with coniferous components, grass fuels, and slash areas. Buffer distances of 30 meters 100 meters, and 1 kilometer have been put forward by the consultant, and maps showing the areas within the city that would fall under a 30 meter, 100 meter, and 1 kilometer wildfire buffer are shown on the screen. There we are. And so the 30 meter buffer would capture roughly 25% of the parcels throughout the city. You can see that on the left-hand side of the screen. A 100 meter buffer would capture just under 50% of the parcels of this within the city, and a 1 kilometer buffer would capture all the parcels in the city. Research conducted by Frontera suggests that the use of a 100 meter buffer would be the most suited to managing anticipated wildfire behavior, historic wildfire smart guidance, and any regulatory burden associated with the designation of a new development permit area, given the geography of the city's wildfire interface. A 100 meter buffer was also found to be the most common approach adopted in comparable communities. The implementation of a 100 meter buffer would capture all structures at the highest risk of exposure to radiant heat from wildfire. Any residual risk in this scenario would most likely be low, with smaller pockets of moderate risk. Alternatively, the city could adopt a larger buffer to minimize risk further. The downside of this approach is that it would also capture many more properties determined to be at low wildfire risk. This means that additional staff time would be required to process and review 100% of the development applications for adherence to wildfire guidelines. And it would also add additional cost and time to the development process, not only the city, but the developers in our community. Also keep in mind that the city's authority to require changes to existing properties to make them more wildfire resistant only happens at the time the property is redeveloped. And this means that the reduction of risk, even where all properties in the city are captured by a wildfire development permit area, is limited by how quickly parcels are redeveloped. So realistically, in our community, we're talking about, something that would be measured in decades, perhaps even half centuries, considering how quickly some of our neighborhoods develop, or I should say, how quickly they don't redevelop. So at its core, the selection of an appropriate wildfire buffer is an exercise in determining risk tolerance, and that's why staff are seeking direction from council before moving forward further on this initiative. Based on the recommendation from Frontera, staff recommend that council determine that a 100 meter wildfire buffer is acceptable. Following the selection of a wildfire buffer, corresponding form, character, and landscape guidelines will be developed. It's going to the recommendation for tonight that council directs staff to proceed with using a 100 meter wildfire buffer as the basis for the City of Powell River's wildfire hazard development permit area designation. And I will suggest that perhaps the recommendation should have read that the committee that whole direct staff. That was an oversight on our part. We are looking for direction from this committee. If I am incorrect in this committee's ability to direct on something like this, perhaps the deputy corporate officer can jump in. But just to clarify for the committee tonight, we're looking for direction. That completes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Gao. I'm going to look to the committee to see if anyone has any questions, but to start with, I do have a question. So this is part of emergency management, and over at the regional district, we have Mr. Toms that manages that. Is this something that we've asked his input on already, or are they aware of our study? Are we working together?
Absolutely. So this actually is partially funded by a grant that was received by the regional district and then forwarded to the city. So the regional district was very involved, specifically Mr. Toms, in this process. He's aware of it. I think at some point there will be an opportunity to ensure that we're all on the same page in terms of something like a wildfire buffer. But my expectation is that Mr. Toms would defer to the expertise of Frontera and as knowledgeable wildfire development permit area specialists.
Thank you. Councillor Dow.
Yeah, so as I sometimes do, I think what you're asking us to do today, Mr. Gao, is to make a decision on how much of a fire interface buffer, we think we should think about putting in a future OCP. Should it be 30 meters away from a massive high fire hazard? Should it be 100 meters, or should it be a kilometer away? I read through, actually reread the 2015 Regional District Report on interface fires and all the 30-some recommendations that they had back then. And considering bylaws is one of those. It's been something that has been recommended that the city and the regional district think about since 2015. And that's probably a lot more in people's minds lately, having watched the news about what was going on in California before Donald Trump took over the news again. But it's there, and it's a good idea. And I spent a lot of time looking at all those, and I suggest that people go and look, because when we see these maps that are up on the TVs and screens in this room, you really don't get the full picture about what we're talking about fire hazard areas. And the 2015 report to the regional district goes through all the wildfire history and all the hazards for many, many years. It's a good idea, and I think the proposal here is that we should think about setting a distance of 100 meters away from a high fire hazard area to require that people, if they're going to do any development in those areas, to have a development permit. We're dealing with that. And then from all the reports I read, the development permits can do one of two things. They can either get rid of the fire hazard, like get rid of the fuel by cutting down trees and harvesting bushes and changing the landscaping around homes, or changing the way that houses are built by requiring them to be more fireproof. Two choices. I don't think planning is asking us to get into how we want to define those choices, but the recommendation is that we set a 100-meter area. And I looked at my place in Wildwood. Some people know where I live. The 30-meter one just touches one little corner of my property. The 100-meter one covers my entire property. And the 100-meter zone covers about 50% of the properties in the city. So if we were to have a bylaw for a development permit area within 100, required within 100 meters of a high fire risk area, that would cover half of the homes in town. So if somebody wants to build a carriage house or build a new building or expand on their property, or they will have to go and get a permit. And my question, I guess, out of all that to the staff is I haven't seen a development permit area for a wildfire hazard, a bylaw that anybody has. They're probably out there, but I haven't seen one. And I just wonder what staff thinks would be the cost of implementing one and the cost of doing all the inspections and the amount of delay it might cause to somebody looking for a building permit.
The chair to, sorry.
Through the chair, go ahead, Director Gow. I'll chip in after you. Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Dowd. You know, I think when we compare them to other development permit areas that we do have environmental development permit areas that there are a modest cost. The goal is really to get people to comply with the requirements, and I'm thinking specifically of the environmental or the riparian areas regulation DPA that we have. So if the cost is the bigger concern for council, there's ways that we can mitigate that. I think if your question is also about the cost to the developer or the cost to the homeowner in the long run, you know, the big one there is going to be materials, fire resistant materials, but do keep in mind that hardy plank continues to be a very readily used material these days, or I shouldn't say it by its brand name, but fiber cement siding is really what it is, and that is a fire resistant material. We continue to see more and more of that product being built or used in buildings. You know, in terms of timelines, you know, an added development permit is going to take more time. Again, this is another development permit area that staff would recommend is delegated to staff internally. And so that currently we're processing a number of development permits internally. And those are actually shortened down to about a month in time. And often they're the same drawings that people are required to submit as part of their building permit. So we're not adding additional costs associated with designers and such. But it is more time. And one of the reasons why we've come back arguably in the middle here, not so much in distance, but in terms of the recommendations from the consultant, as a way to eliminate 50% of the parcels having to have that additional regulatory requirement applied to their property at time of development.
I have one more.
I have Mayor, and then I can come back to you if you want.
Okay, come back to me.
And I also have Councillor Isaacson. So Mayor Wasnow.
Thank you. So I'm going to move the motion. And the reason I'm going to move it is I was in Athabasca, Alberta, when everybody was flooding out of the fire disaster area. And I also watched with interest the conversations around Jasper and why the municipality hadn't taken measures. So I'd like to move that the committee direct staff to proceed with using a 100-meter wildfire buffer as the basis for the City of Powell River's wildfire hazard development permit area designation.
Seconded by Councillor Palm. I'm just going to talk a little bit procedurally, though. We haven't finished asking questions of the report yet, so we can put the motion on the floor, but I would pause speaking to it until we're finished questions and then come back to it.
Thank you.
You're welcome, if that pleases the council. So the motion is on the floor, the one in the package, and I have Councillor Isaacson with question, followed by Councillor Dowd again.
Thank you, Chair. My question, it might be for planning and for fire department staff. So I'm in my head, I have some questions that to me might rationalize making it a kilometer, and I would love to hear the arguments as to why I'm wrong. And so one, in looking at the California wildfires and many other wildfires, we're not talking about forest fires, we're talking about interface fires. And my understanding in particular in California more currently is a lot of the fire spread is house to house. It's not from forest to house, it's traveling from house to house. And so the distance from forest or from fuel isn't necessarily the only factor. The other thing is I'm wondering if it was a kilometer and then therefore covered the entire community, would we not just not have a DPA and instead build it into our building bylaws and avoid the DPA process? I'm wondering if I have those things correct or incorrect.
Through the chair to Councillor Isaacson, I can start, and then the fire chief can add something as well. I think I'll start with your first question. I think that there's value in considering an approach that might look at including some of the requirements in the building bylaw. And if in fact we were looking at the entire community, perhaps that's one route that we'd go. I'd want to spend a bit more time thinking about the broader impacts and why most communities are developing development permit areas. There must be a reason as opposed to just including it in a bylaw, in a building bylaw. But I think there's merit to looking at that to answer that question. The first question you asked, and something that I anticipated members of council would, considering what's going on down in California right now, is I did reach out to the consultant to ask a little bit about how we might consider the fires in LA in relationship to Powell River. And I'll just read you a quote from what he responded. He did respond with quite a statement, but this is just an excerpt So although Powell River is an interface community with vulnerabilities to wildfire, an event similar to the LA wildfire is extremely unlikely. Although Powell River does experience episodic outflow conditions similar to the Santa Ana winds, these outflow conditions are nowhere near as severe or frequent as Santa Ana winds. Similarly, although Powell River does experience extended summer droughts, even the most severe droughts are much shorter and less severe than the drought conditions present in LA at the time of these wildfires. It points out that LA has only received 4.1 millimeters of rain since May of 2024. A wildfire event in Powell River of comparable severity would require outflow conditions with record-breaking heat, low humidity, and wind speeds occurring at the same time as record-breaking drought. This is extremely unlikely. One more important note is that with climate change, the possibility of record-breaking extremes, the events are increasing, and although the likelihood of severe interface wildfire events at the scale of the LA wildfires is unlikely in Powell River, the likelihood is increasing with climate change. So there's the caveat, if you will. But in terms of where we're at today, I think you've got the consultant saying they're not apples to apples in terms of a comparison, but fair enough. It's not to say that we wouldn't want to make sure that we have, we want to be as risk averse as possible. And obviously that is an example. I will give you the benefit of knowing that Squamish and West Vancouver are two communities that do use a 1 kilometer buffer, and it essentially just encapsulates their entire community.
Through the chair, if I might ask Director Gow a question that might answer Councillor Isaacson's. One of the benefits of using a development permit area versus the building bylaw, which could also complement, is that the development permit area, in my understanding, might include some requirements that are not specific to the building itself, but to the site. Can you comment on that? Thank you.
Through the chair to the CEO, absolutely. So yes, there are included would be requirements around vegetation, which would not pertain to the building bylaw and could not be included there. So thank you for reminding me. And that's likely one of the key reasons why a development permit area is used.
Councillor Southcott.
So I appreciate this recommendation and the intention. Building houses, we're thinking 50 or more years into the future. It's clear to me that climate is changing. I've been watching winds for many years, and in recent years I've seen a lot more southeasters during the summer, which is the worrying direction for a wind to come from. We have had, in recent years, we've had fires up in the Goat Lake area, or not Goat Lake, Duck Lake area. They've been squashed really fast, but there are also very good resources close by for the most part, and we have a wildfire crew stationed here as well. So I appreciate the provincial scale of protection for us, but I also very much appreciate the long-term vision that's represented by this report. And in that regard, I understand both forestry and building industries are considering these same long-term trends. So my question is, I am under the impression that the building industry in our community is already building with fire smart considerations, and both for landscaping and construction. For example, hardy board on the outside of dwellings and steel roofs, construction considerations like that are becoming more the norm, but that's just hearsay as far as I'm concerned. I'm wondering if Mr. Gow has any numbers or impression if that is true, which would be consistent with what the intention of the development permit area is. And I would expect it to be more extensive even than that, in terms of getting down to details.
Through the chair to Councillor Southcott, I think some of that is very accurate. I think some of our development community have wholeheartedly adopted the use of fiber cement for a number of reasons, probably not because of its fire resistant materials, materiality, if you will, but because it is a very durable product and it holds up well to a lot of different weather. But I will point out that there is actually a resurgence in a push for the use of vinyl siding in our community, and some of our developers are going to. I expect that some of them will push on our existing development permit areas that do not allow vinyl siding. And those development permit areas, again, were not established for the purpose of eliminating materials from the perspective of reducing wildfire risk. They were eliminated for form and character reasons. So I'm thinking of the town site development permit area that doesn't allow the use of vinyl siding, as well as other the small lot residential development permit area. So I think you're accurate that a lot of developers have moved towards some of these materials, but it's not everybody.
Thank you.
So did we have any further questions?
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Doubt.
So, throughout the report, it talks about meeting regularly with the Tla'amin Nation and the Qathet Regional District, and the city is absolutely surrounded by the Tla'amin Nation and the Regional District. And I'm wondering if, in your impression, there is any interest at all in either the Regional District or the Tla'amin Nation in adopting a development permit system for their lands, because we're surrounded by it. If we do something and their surrounding areas don't, that's one question about fire risk. If we do something about development permit areas and the other areas don't, it makes a difference about where people might choose to spend their money and build a piece of a habitation for a building. And I think we should think about those. But it's kind of a side question, I guess, because we're really just talking about how big a buffer we want. Do you have any indication from either the Regional District or the Tla'amin Nation that they're interested in putting in place any kind of bylaws like that?
Through the chair to Councillor Dowd, I unfortunately haven't been involved in those meetings, but my takeaway from staff that have been involved is that there's been no commitment at this point. As we know that the Regional District doesn't have some of the other mechanisms that would help support a development permit for something of this nature. So in some ways it would be a development permit without the teeth of a building permit program that would require adherence to a development permit before a building permit was issued. I can't speak to Tla'amin. It's something that, again, we will continue to engage with, because I think you've identified that there is should be a concern, at least in some focused areas of our community. But yes, hope that answers.
Thank you, Mr. Gao. I have a question. When we implement development permit areas and issue development permits, are they separate permits from the ordinary development permits, or are they simply, is it one development permit that includes the provisions for the development permit area, and is it all handled as one singular process, or is it separate processes?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, that is a great question, and I'm trying to think of so for example, if we're looking at a multifamily building in both the Uptown Mixed Use Development Permit area, as well as it being a multifamily development permit area 1, we would modify that and issue one development permit for that. I think in a situation where we're dealing with quite different development permits, one being a hazard lands development permit and another being, say, a small lot residential, we would look at those as two development permits. Keeping in mind, again, that those are both at the lower end of cost related to the development permits. They're handled internally. And so they're not coming before council. They don't require a staff report. So staff's time involved with them is quite a bit less. I think what might be interesting is a multifamily building where we were going to come before council, have to write a report, as well as it would have to adhere to development permit guidelines related to a wildfire DPA. And it's something for us to consider as we move forward. Those conversations haven't been had, but it's unlike, for example, the riparian area, development permit area that would be truly a standalone piece. I could see where there might be an opportunity to ensure more from an efficiency perspective and economic perspective that we weren't overcharging, considering that there is unique work going into both of those processes from staff. So time associated with both of those processes that could be a reason why we would still want to charge development permit costs for each of those processes. I hope that answers your question. I admittedly we haven't gone down the path of really figuring that out yet.
So one of the immediate thoughts I had was, if we are issuing 2 permits as a result of a development permit area and maybe some unique aspects around hazards or some sort, would we be processing them in, like, coordinating the processing and issuing of those within the same time frame, or would one be holding up the other if we had to issue one and then wait for another?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, I would say that in the example of permits that are delegated to staff, those we would coordinate. They would come in and be processed and be issued at the same time. Where we have a development permit that is delegated to staff, and then a development permit that comes before council, for example, a multifamily building with 4 or more units, that would, we wouldn't be able to coordinate those in the same way.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any other questions? We could move on to the motion that's on the floor if we've done with questions. Mayor Wasna, would you like to speak to the motion?
To reiterate that watched comments from both Jasper and Fort McMurray after their fires. There's a lot of consensus that we should have recognized the importance of testing bylaws to prevent something. That's the reason why I'm motion, because I think that it'll indicate that we are aware of climate change, other issues, being proactive, spent money on consultant and listening to your guy, the competence, the consultant. So I'm quite prepared to take that recommendation.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else wanting to speak on the motion? Councillor Palm.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. This is an opportunity to talk about development permit areas, but within city boundaries, happened 20 years.
A point of privilege. I can't hear Councillor Palm speaking.
All right. I don't know. Trying to speak in the microphone. Can you hear me now?
Much better, thank you.
Yep. So I'd say, trying to say over the last 20 years, previous councils have looked at trees growing and vegetation within the city boundaries that continue to grow. And in this day and age of wildfire and seeing what's happening in LA, you can't be too complacent in terms of being fire smart. So I hope, Mr. Gow, that we're going to be focused not only in this regard, but within city bylaws to try to mitigate as much as we can as far as fire risks. We have numerous places in our community where evergreens are growing, alders are growing, and it wouldn't take much in terms of a hot summer that we've had a few years ago to see a fire break out and homes start to ignite. So that are only less than 30 meters away from that type of growth. So I hope we're going to look at our bylaws down the road. It's better to be proactive rather than reactive. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wishes to speak to the motion? You're hard to see, Trina, so speak up if you wanted to speak.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I see I'm not on the screen right now.
Sorry,
do I have the floor?
Councillor Isaacs.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I share the concerns that the mayor brought forward in making this motion. I think as you can tell by the question that I asked staff, I wonder a little bit about whether more might be prudent, only so far in that it feels a little bit that like this recommendation addresses today. And when houses are built, given Mr. Gao's comment that there is slow development. And so when development or redevelopment over existing single family home lots, so when we do have redevelopment, we should be maximizing the reduction in risk. That being said, we have to balance it with the real costs or the additional small hurdle that does take place in the application process. So I'm kind of two minds. I would be willing to vote against this, but I'd also be very happy that it passes. So I'm just a little bit concerned that it is planning for today and not for 75 years from now, when some of the houses and their roofs and siding, etc., will still exist. So I'm still thinking about it. A little bit conflicted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Did you have? Okay. We're going to call the question now if everybody's ready. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, that's unanimous. The motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to 5.2 with the fire rescue chief.
Through the chair, briefly, this report before you is something that our bylaws team has been wanting to see addressed for some time. And so through the chief, we've managed to put this forward to you. And it's basically a way of more effectively dealing with bylaw infractions and the processing of tickets and reducing staff time involved in small to minor offenses in terms of court time. So Chief Drakely, if you might outline a little bit of the Coles notes on this process, that would help council. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of council. You have before you my report requesting that council authorize Powell River's participation in the bylaw notice enforcement system. The system will provide our bylaw officers with an additional simpler tool to enforce bylaw offenses. It does set maximum limits for tickets at the $500 mark. We will also, if this is approved, be forwarding a bylaw enforcement bylaw that adds additional offenses that are currently not covered under our MTIs. The dispute system itself requires, once it's implemented, requires the application of screening officers. Those are usually myself or another director or some managers that are in charge of the bylaws for that department. When a complaint is or an argument is made for the ticket that has been provided, they bring it to the director. They review the bylaw officer's file along with the complaint from the person that received the ticket, and it's adjudicated right on the spot. The person committing the offense also has the ability to go to an attorney general appointed adjudicator in a municipality close by. We've approached Comox, we've approached the Seashelt with regards to opting into their system that they don't have any issues with. So we will share the cost of a day of a court attorney general appointed adjudicator to hear these offenses. And if we are successful, the fine is levied plus a $25 fee for the city that goes into coffers. And if it's negated, then the offense is put to bed at that point. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief. I'll look to the committee to see if we have questions. Councillor Isaacson.
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair to Chief Drakely. I know in some other municipalities, but perhaps larger ones, in order to, maybe there are situations where there aren't fines, but they're trying to do education or relationship management before getting to fines. There's use of like restorative justice or non-punitive processes. And I'm wondering if in moving forward with something like this, would that remove that possibility, or would that be part of the kind of the, in some cases, like a pre-fine or kind of the education component that I know that bylaws often try to use in working with residents?
Right. The education, compliance, and enforcement process will still be in place, and we'll use that whether it's the bond system or the MTI system. The bond system actually does provide what's called a compliance agreement. So in order to get compliance with the enforcement that's required, basically it allows for a non-fined compliance agreement between the city and whoever's committing the offense. So there is a non-monetary aspect to it as well. But with that said, we will always eliminate the education first. Then we'll seek compliance, and this can take, as you're well aware, for some other issues, it can take months to be able to gain compliance. So it's not a heavy hit right after or immediately. And then after a certain period of time, that it's required to have enforcement. So.
Thank you. So I actually have a question, or I'm seeking clarification. So the request is to move from our current ticketing system, which is basically anytime someone wants to say have it or to oppose the ticket, it is handled by the court system, to a system that is handled by a third-party adjudicator, which is cost shared among a number of communities that are using this exact same system. So that's the request, is to move from what we currently do to this other cost shared adjudicator system.
No, the request is to add that additionally. So we still require our MTI municipal ticketing information system. We still require that for some of the heavier fines that go into the $5,000 and $10,000, which is getting close to the maximum for the MTIs. We'll still keep that in place. This will substitute that, because there's not a lot of the legal requirements to submit a ticket. For the MTIs, we have to serve those directly to the individual. For the bonds, we can leave it on their door, we can leave it on their window. It doesn't have to be served to them directly. So this is just an additional tool. It's just a lot simpler for the bylaw officers.
An extra layer within the process.
Correct. Okay,
great. Thank you for that. Do we have anyone interested in making a motion? Councillor Southcott.
I move that the bylaw offense adjudication system be referred to a regular council meeting.
Seconded by Councillor Doubt. Anybody wish to speak to that motion? Councillor Southcott?
It's been well spoken to already. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none opposed, motion carries unanimously. And that brings us to community engagement reports. And I think we started that side last time, so we'll start this time. With actually, I'll start with Councillor Isaacson, because if she was here, she would be further to my right. Councillor Isaacson.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I just knew this was going to happen, but luckily, fortunately for my taking a look at my calendar, we only had a week since our last committee of the whole meeting. So if I'm looking at my calendar, I think the main thing that happened last week was our budget open house, and really excellent opportunity to connect with members of the public. I will note that that I think there were some members of the public that were, considering or thinking that there might be a presentation. And for those people, they were looking at presentation on the budget and about potential cuts. I encouraged them to come to the February 27th meeting, which is listed in our financial staff's council approved agenda for the budgeting process. And so I had a lot of one-on-one and 1-to-3 conversations with members of the public who many of them I had never chatted with before. And one of the residents wrote to me the next day, just thanking me for the time to talk and that it was very valuable and really loved it, ! And so wanted to reach out and say thank you, that he acknowledged that we have a tough job. And was also wondering that if council has opportunities like that throughout the year. And I think that speaks to me to appetite for the proposal that Councillor Southcott put forward earlier around opportunities for community engagement. This opportunity to just sit down one-on-one, 1-to-2, 1-to-3, and chat with members of council. And granted, the answers that I give might be different than another member of council when we're speaking about our opinions on issues or how we interpret how council works. But it was just viewed very favorably. Maybe some of my answers he agreed with or didn't, but the experience of interacting was just viewed very favorably. So it was really great to have that experience. And that's all I will report on for today. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Southcott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I mentioned this last week, but a week ago, the Regional Emergency Executive Committee was presented with a report. And this meeting was held at that boardroom called the Regional Extreme Heat Response Plan, which I really appreciated. And having been involved in emergency planning for many years prior to being here, and also having been a casualty in the heat dome a few years back, to a minor degree, made an impression on me. And I found it's an extensive report. I'm not sure if it's available quite publicly yet, but it probably will be if it isn't. And I was wondering if there's any chance that was going to be a report on that was going to be presented to council. It seemed to me to be really relevant.
Through the chair, Ryan Toms, who's our emergency coordinator in partnership with Tlahaman and the QRD, will be coming to council to present the report. Thank you.
Really glad to hear that. It was fascinating too, and really well presented by the Frey, I believe, who's was the consultant. He's very dedicated and very knowledgeable. Last night there was an event at the Evergreen Theatre presented by our MP Rachel Blaney and an MP from Winnipeg on residential schools and denialism. It was quite interesting. A fairly large crowd turned up. And yesterday was a community action team meeting, major focus on homelessness. The homelessness count is coming up this April to update our numbers. And there's certainly a concern for at least finding a temporary location for the overdose prevention facility. It's viewed as critical in terms of looking after a pretty marginalized sector in our population here in our community. And the current one is going to be closed by the end of March. And that's getting closer. And that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dowd?
So long since last Tuesday.
I know, it's a short one.
But there have been interesting things going on. I just want to report on a couple of them. First, I went to a book selling event and a book discussion called Standing the High Ground, where there was about the TMX pipeline resistors and people who were engaged in civil disobedience and had been arrested and spent their time in jail, some local people. And the book goes into the stories of people throughout the province who were involved in protesting the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion, their view on why they were doing it, why they thought it was a reasonable thing to do, and what's happened to them since. So it was an interesting discussion there. I also went last night to the residential school denialism presentation, which I found very useful. There's quite a wide variety of members of the community there. I recognized all kinds of people. So I think it was a good event and a good discussion happened. So that was what's happened since last Tuesday. I'm sure there'll be lots going on before we have the next report to a council meeting.
Mayor Wasnow.
Thank you. I have been meeting with the pickleball president, treasurer, and various pickleball players about how the city might assist them in finding a pickleball place. I've been aware of the progression of pickleball for people of all ages, and later this year, I'm actually going to see an 8-court pickleball facility in Vernon, BC. And Vernon, BC has become a location of choice for pickleball tournaments and competitions. And the city certainly has benefited from that. So what I think today, actually, I'd talked with the president, who indicated that she had heard that the fire hall that had been shut down might be available. So I asked our CAO and Kelly to follow up with them to see whether or not that's an opportunity. But I think it's important that when you see what's happening with a particular activity, and it is one that all age groups can participate in, and that schools are promoting, that there should be a role for the city to do that. So I'm not saying that we should fund it, but I think that we should be an assist in doing that. And the example I used is that they've identified a steel building, cost about $600,000. I asked them to look at the city library as an example where there were essentially naming rights, so that pickleball fundraising could include that. I did have several conversations with the executive of the Westview ratepayers, and they're a little disappointed that they haven't been accepted to be on the LIFT committee that's looking at supportive housing in Powell River. So they're suggesting that if they can't get involved in that, then maybe the city and the Westview ratepayers, in conjunction with other ratepayers, could have our own process. Just going to wait to see what's happening there. COO and myself did meet with the executive director of LIFT and the chair of the LIFT board, just to discuss mutual opportunities. And I think that at the end of the meeting, there was a pretty good understanding of how we can assist each other. And especially when we're involved with BC Housing, who I think everybody knows is going to be here at the end of the month for discussion. So nice to have us moving in the same direction. That's it. Thank you.
Councillor Paul.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a couple of items, a couple of community events that I attended recently. One was the arrival of Pierre Poilievre to Powell River, and a well-attended event at Dwight Hall. last week. Very exciting for our community to have a federal member that could possibly be the next Prime Minister of Canada here in our community, which hasn't happened since I've been here for 40 years, and I don't know if it's ever happened. But it was quite very entertaining because not only was it well done and the message was well received, but you could feel in the building that night of vibration and excitement and positivity that I haven't felt in this community for some period of time. And that's just the way I felt that evening. It was quite uplifting. So I just want to thank to the organizers for not only presenting and making that happen for our citizens, but also mentioning that the mayor was unable to attend that night because of his recent surgery, and at least they were able to attend and mention that I was in the audience that night, Mayor, which was well received. So somebody was there from City Hall and from Council. Secondly, I attended the fundraiser for the Westview ratepayers last Sunday evening, and again, that was well attended. I want to thank the Carlson Club for allowing them to hold their gathering there, and I think that'll be an ongoing event to help the ratepayers raise funds for various activities. And I just report to Council that there were a number of people that had concerns. I'm just going to mention 4 of the concerns that were out there from that group, because it, it's right through our community. And that was, they're concerned about taxation. They're concerned about budget process. They want to be involved. Secondly, they're concerned about supportive housing and not hearing direction on how that's going to unfold. So there's a lot of questions around that. And at this point in time, nobody seems to have any answers, and they're searching. Thirdly, questions in regards to the mill site, the recent announcement with Clahaman taking an active role in what's going on that site for the future of our community economically. I think it's a great step in the right direction, and I hope, as I said to them that evening, that we hear more in terms of how that is going to unfold as time goes on. And lastly, there's a concern about communication. When you think back, the mayor's motion that he made some time ago about him holding events, and I think some of the problem was where the funding going to come from to provide such a gathering. I would encourage the mayor to bring back the resolution a second time, and we have another healthy discussion around that and be creative, because as we found out in the budget discussion and citizens coming in, we all very much enjoyed our interaction with our citizens. And I think if the mayor was to do a presentation followed by a mingling of citizens and ourselves at that event, I think it would go a long way to bolster communication and alleviate the concept that our citizens, as some of them say, are not being listened to. So I'm just throwing that out there, and Mayor, I would encourage you to do so, hopefully in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Palm. I guess that leaves us with me. So I did meet with Michelle Hanna, the Director of Operations over at the hospital on Friday, when we discussed the upcoming meeting with BC Housing and VCH, and continue to discuss the need for services for long-term care and some of the communication happening out there. She provided me updates with staffing and the progress they're making with the staffing here in our community. I wish I had brought up the concept of the clinic, but it's not within her bailiwick, but I did not. So I'll try to put that on the agenda for the next time around whether VCH has a way other than emergency to handle walk-ins as part of their mandate, or whether they intend to have it as part of their mandate. I don't know, and I don't have the answer to that question. I just wanted to let people know that it's on my radar. And then also last Wednesday, I know most of the community knows I've been on the board for Powell River Therapeutic Riding Association for many years. I did tender my resignation there, and I am not on that board anymore. And I have utmost confidence in our new president and vice president and the strategic planning we've recently done to help them move and transition. And I have been feeling overtaxed and have tried to scale back a little bit of what I'm doing. And so they have new legs and I want them to run with them, and I'm excited to see what they do in the future. But just for the community's information, I'm not on that board any longer. Some of the other stuff I did was I was coordinating some meetings for the CAT Education Committee to bring some folks from the Youth CAT and our CAT together to talk to the Qathet Living magazine around ideas for a feature story around what community action teams do, how our community action teams are, and what we're working on, and the progress we've been making. So stay tuned. Hopefully that works out and we get better and more information for educating our community around those community action teams. And that's my report for this 1 week. Thank you for everybody for being here. That brings us on the agenda to questions, and I'm wondering if over in the media we have any questions. You're welcome. Mr. Whitaker, do you have questions?
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to come today. And if you could just entertain a small comment before I have my question, I'd like to thank His Worship for making the extraordinary effort on Tuesday morning to go out and meet with visitors to our community. I was covering an event and saw him there. It was very good. Pardon me, ma'am? What happened?
I don't know where that sound was coming from. I'm really sorry, Mr. Whitaker.
My apologies. It was through me. Thank you. I fixed it.
What happened?
I accidentally hit on the video, so I was seeing you twice.
Okay, we had a technical blip.
Twice the question.
Carry on.
Yeah. So did you hear my comment, Mr. Mayor?
I did.
Thank you very much, sir, for that effort. My question is, with the new system about bylaw resolution, will bylaw still be operating on the complaint-driven method that they operate under currently, without adding additional opportunities to selectively and discretionarily generate revenue?
I'm going to ask our CAO to direct that to wherever she would like.
Through the chair, I will also refer this to Chief Drakely. Yes, we do operate on a complaint basis and also an observation basis, where on the rounds, our bylaw officers, once they see things and aware of them, they do have to deal with them. Chief Drakely, please correct me if I'm wrong.
You are correct.
Thank you.
I guess the troubling part was they don't have to have contact with the person. They can just stick it on your window or your door.
That's correct.
Okay. That's an interesting new aspect to their approach, I guess, of enforcement and education. Thank you. That's all I had to ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. Anyone present any other people present have questions for our committee tonight? Is there anyone online with questions for the committee tonight? Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion from Mayor Wasnow, seconded by Councillor Southcott. All in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you. Driven to run our patients through